Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris.
My name is Justin.
And my name is Mike. In today's episode, we will be going over what's on our minds, followed by our review of The Old Man and the Gun, starring Robert Redford. So join us.
Yeah, and if you want to follow along with what we're watching next or send us any questions on the films that we're going to be watching, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. You can also send your questions or thoughts to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And as always, please don't forget to go on to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think of the show. It'll help get the show out there, help grow the show, help more people find it.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right. So, guys, are we ready to move into what is on our minds?
Always.
Yep.
Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Okay.
So, I watched the TV show Bodyguard, starring Richard Madden, Robb Stark. Mike, you know him from The Game of Thrones. And it also stars Keely Haas. And it's about a bodyguard who was a soldier, and he's dealing with PTSD from the Iraqi war, and thinks we should have never gone to this war in the first place. And he is tasked to guard a politician who has the opposing view of him and views that he opposes, like, vehemently. He really dislikes her position on almost everything, but he is tasked with guarding her. So this show came out recently on the BBC and is now airing on Netflix. I love the setup of it, like someone that's supposed to give up their life but doesn't agree with anything that this politician has to say. I think it's a really great setup. What I'll say about the show is the first 30 minutes of the first episode are so tense and so good. This is what I thought. I was like, this is what the Jack Ryan TV show should have been. This is the Tom Clancy that I want to see. It's just so tense, so good. However, as the show goes on, the coincidences continue to pile up and stretch the believability of the show and make it hard to watch. There's so many twists and turns, I can't really get into too much of it without spoiling it. But suffice to say, I will recommend that you watch the first episode because I think it's really good, tense filmmaking, done really well. And I think the two lead actors are really good. And I think we'll see Richard Madden's going to be a movie star, I think. I think he'll make it big because he's really good in this, as this like brooding bodyguard dealing with PTSD. Yeah, so as ultimately a kind of a disappointment, it takes a few missteps. But that first episode kind of got me through all of it. And there's a couple of set pieces that are really good, tense filmmaking. But ultimately, storytelling-wise, it's not that great.
How many episodes is it?
8.
Is it
actually.
Like one season and done?
I saw an article when I was kind of doing some research about it, and they were saying they'd love to do a second season like the creator was, and he just wasn't sure that they could get Richard Madden back to do another season. So I kind of hope that it's just a limited series. The BBC does those things a lot, so it could go for 2 to 3 years without another season or series, and never, and then they could come back with a new one, like a limited series run type thing. So I believe it's actually 6 episodes. So excuse me for saying 8. So yeah, it's not too long. That's the other thing. They are longer episodes, and I think the last episode's like an hour and a half. So, but it's just not quite worth watching. And then there's so much other great TV out there.
Yeah.
But watch that first episode for sure, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think I know. Watch the first episode.
It's hard to even want to even think about watching one episode of something, knowing like it doesn't maintain that quality.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I agree. That makes sense. The first 20 minutes are just really good, and I just recommend the first 20 minutes. That's what I would say. The first 30 minutes of the first episode. So that way you're not too
Was it 20 or is it 30?
I would say 30.
Yeah. I mean, with everything out there, like I feel like I've hit that point with like Netflix and streaming services in general. When you're like when you fall behind on a show and you go, I can't catch up anymore. Like, I'm just so far behind, I'll never catch up. Like, I feel that way with like all the TV out there. And so every time like a new show like this pops up, it feels like piling on the amount of things out there, and it gets like overwhelming.
Yeah, this is one that can fall by the wayside for sure. I got caught up. That first episode was so good, and then it just kind of, you want to see what happens next, and then that's where the twists and turns come in. But ultimately, it doesn't lead anywhere.
It can't
so
maintain that level of twisty turniness.
Yeah,
and quality.
Without having too many coincidences that happen, and that believability getting stretched too far. It's kind of like 24.
Yeah. Or like those Netflix Marvel shows, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's not as. Some of those are really bad, but it's not as bad as some of those. But it's along those lines. You finish it and you kind of feel empty inside. You're like, that didn't get me anywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Didn't they cancel all of those Netflix Marvel shows recently?
Some of them.
Not all of them.
Not all of them? Okay. I thought I saw that it was all of them, but I guess that's wrong.
Just Luke Cage and Iron Fist, I believe.
So
unless you
far.
saw something. Yeah. Yeah, so, Justin, what is on your mind?
Well, what's on my mind is the end of October and the end of scary movie season. And to cap it off, Nicole, my girlfriend, and I, we watched the first Scream movie, which she wasn't sure if she'd ever actually seen, like sitting down like in one sitting and watching it. And I know I haven't seen it since probably right around when it came out, before Scream 2 even came out. So it's been a long time since I've seen it. And so we rewatched it, and man, I really like this movie. I think when it came out, I was pretty young. I don't even remember what year it came out, but I'm pretty sure it was like late 90s, and I was like a kid. And I just don't think I appreciated the movie. Like, to me, it was just like some scary movie or whatever, which I wasn't that into. And I was probably like held down and made to watch the first Scream at the time. But anyways, it's
someone held you down, like sat on top of you.
That seems pretty awful.
Yeah, I'm not sure that literally happened, because I feel like I'd remember that better. But I'm pretty sure I watched it feeling some sort of obligation to watch it. But anyways, I really appreciate what the movie's doing, and I think that some of what it's doing feels a little cliche now, or like you kind of want to roll your eyes at it a bit. Like some of the things that it did in the movie are just like been done to death, like being kind of meta and self-referential. And I think what I found really interesting watching this is that I have seen the first Scary Movie many more times than I've seen the first Scream. And the first Scary Movie is like a blatant copy of Scream, like for as far as plot, and even like it uses a lot of the exact same like literal lines. And so I was watching this one, and like it kind of reminded me of when I hear like a Weird Al Yankovic song so much that like I can't go back to the original song and enjoy the original song anymore. Like I was really enjoying everything that Scream was doing, but it like has these moments that I'm like, okay, like I just can't take seriously because the Scary Movie version of them is so silly and kind of like highlights what's silly about them in the original Scream, if that makes sense.
I vaguely barely remember the Scary Movie franchise. That was never my favorite franchise, so I've almost blocked most of it from my memory, to be honest. Yeah. But but I remember, like key scenes being like exactly the same,
right?
Like in the same way that like Hot Shots does Rambo,
right?
Or Hot Shots Part 2 does Rambo.
Yeah, or if you ever saw Wrongfully Accused with Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah, like The Fugitive.
Yeah, it's like sometimes hard to go back and like see The Fugitive again and without thinking of the Wrongfully Accused scenes. Like in a way, it just kind of like it almost ruins the movie. And I granted, not everyone is going to have seen Scary Movie enough for it to like overtake
hopefully more people
Scream.
have seen Scream than Scary Movie.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
And more often.
Yeah, so I think it's a bit of a personal problem, but I just found it just weird, like how much of the movie or how much Scary Movie highlighted like some of the ridiculous things in Scream. Like there's things that I don't know. There's things that like the worst parts about Scream that are just like in your face watching it now, having seen Scary Movie, right? Like the Courtney Cox character is the weather woman, or no, she's the news reporter, and her name is Gail Weathers, and like Scary Movie, the character's name is Gale Hailstorm, and it just kind of like highlights how dumb of a name Gale Weathers is for like a news person. And go ahead.
Sorry. The odd thing to me is Scream itself is a parody, and then Scary Movie is parodying the parody. So it's you kind of got like a snake eating its tail thing. And the cool thing that Scream does so well to me is that it kind of has its cake and eats it too. It's a great parody of slasher films, but at the same time, it gives you the thrills and chills that slasher films do, right?
Yeah, it's really well done and like really enjoyable. And I like part of me wishes Scary Movie didn't exist just so it could like maintain some of that for me, because
or maybe
it was hard to get into.
If Pasky hadn't been so obsessed with it to have it burned into your memory so well.
Sure. Yeah. Unfortunately for me, like Scary Movie came out when I was like 11 or 12.
So did you watch Scary Movie first or Scream first?
I'm pretty sure I watched Scream first because I watched Scream around the time that it came out. And Scary Movie was, I think, at least a couple of years later.
Okay.
I think. Like, I think there were multiple Scream sequels out by the time that the first Scary Movie came out. But I don't know for a fact. But there is something that I caught, and it kind of references Halloween, which just came out, because in Scream, at the party towards the end, they're watching, I believe it's Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis. It's at least one of like the Halloweens, I'm pretty sure, or it might be prom night even. But Jamie Kennedy is in Scary Movie, and there's a scene where he's the only one left watching the film, and he's yelling at Jamie Lee Curtis on the TV to turn around because the killer's behind her. And then in the real world, the killer is behind Jamie Kennedy. And I thought there was something very meta. I don't know how intentional it was with like casting of like Jamie telling another Jamie to turn around. I didn't put that together when I was a kid because I didn't know who Jamie Lee Curtis was, but you know, now I do, now that I'm much older.
Well, maybe. Good catch.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was really funny.
These are the in-depth things you get when you tune into Casual Cinecast.
Yeah. But yeah, anyways, that's it. I think the movie actually holds up a lot better than I thought it was, despite like I thought that it would. Yeah. And I actually really want to go see Scream 2 now because like I've seen it, but I don't remember anything about it, and I don't think there's any direct parody that can ruin Scream 2 for me or any of the sequels. So I want to move on to this.
They're not as good as the first one.
Yeah, I don't expect them to be, but
they made a fourth one that I think I heard was good.
I heard the same thing, but I never saw it because I never saw 3. I know for a fact I've never seen 3.
It has Jay and Silent Bob in it, I think.
As those characters?
I think. Like as a cameo.
Interesting.
One of our listeners is a Scream fanatic, Jerry Hart, so he can write in and let us know all about the about the Scream mythology.
Yeah. Well, I remember in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, don't they have a pet monkey and they lose it, and then they find it in Hollywood where it's starring in films and it's starring as like a killer in a Scream mask.
I don't remember that.
So I don't know. I believe that's what happened. So maybe either that's referencing them being in the Scream films, or maybe I don't know if you're getting those two mixed up, or maybe they are really in there.
I don't know. I saw Scream 3 a long time ago. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's a cameo in there from Jay and Silent Bob. But you'll have to let me know because I can't be bothered to Google it.
Yeah. I mean, why Google it? I know I'll watch the sequel. I know I'll watch Scream 3 relatively soon, so I'm just not going to Google it and let myself
Even
be
though
surprised.
It's not October anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I can still watch scary movies outside of October, I think. They'll probably just not be as like high priorities. But since I just watched this one and it kind of got me excited to see the next ones, it'll probably happen sooner than later.
Cool. Keep us posted.
I will. And for now, that's all that I have on my mind. So, Mike, what's on your mind?
All right. So I don't have too much to talk about in the What's on Our Mind segment this week because I've pretty much exclusively been playing Red Dead Redemption 2. So I'll just talk about that. It is quite good. I really enjoyed the first one a few years back when it came out on PS3. I was still very much into Westerns back then in my Western phase. So I was kind of like in the right place and time to really fall in love with that game, like back in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyways, like lots of references to like the Wild Bunch and all kinds of stuff. So I have been counting down the days until Red Dead Redemption 2 came out. And I was really hoping it would live up to the hype. But most importantly, I really wanted them to remember what made the first one so good, and that is the artful storytelling. You know, like have a story to tell, and don't just give you another cowboy game, kind of like Grand Theft Auto, where you don't really like any characters. You just kind of use them as an excuse to run around, and you don't care about the story too much. Mm-hmm. I was really fearing it would kind of become that, you know, because sidebar, people who aren't video game people, Rockstar, the company that makes Grand Theft Auto, makes Red Dead Redemption. Anyway, this game, guys, is something else. I cannot stop playing it. I am so into this story, and I am very near to its conclusion right now. But I'm in one of those modes where, like, I feel like until I beat it, I can't have closure. You guys know that feeling? Like when you're in the middle of some long-form story, like a book or a show or a game or whatever, and, like, it just kind of consumes your brain, and you can't, like, switch gears to something else.
Yeah. I've definitely had that happen to me.
It's basically what's happening to me right now. But the good news is this game, like, it's so slowly paced and almost frustratingly so at times.
Yeah.
But
starting the... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, hang on one second. Hold that thought. But they don't seem to care because they are setting a pace and they're setting a mood and they're setting a certain storytelling type, right? And it's told so much more artfully than most video games could ever think about being. It's just crazy, the amount of detail in this world. Anyway, what were you saying, Chris?
I apologize for interrupting you, but I was, frustratingly slowly paced at the beginning when you first start playing it because you're used to running around like a maniac in these games, which I should also say I've been playing it this weekend as well. I don't know that it's quite consuming as much as you have, but I have enjoyed it quite a bit. But when I first started playing it, I wanted to speed around and run everywhere, like in Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that. But he walks very slowly and deliberately, and
it has the
actually appreciate
running around elements, right? But you got to play for like 3 hours before you get there.
Yeah, but yeah, I've really enjoyed this game so much. It's highly addictive, and you also will. I found myself, I'll sit down and be like, I'll just play this for a little bit. And then the next thing I do, I look at my phone and it's 3 hours later.
Yep.
You know, and you're like, how did that happen? Like, oh my goodness, you know, I got to go do other things.
That's what I'm saying, right? It's like, I hop on there because I just want to do the story. But even like the tasks of like, I don't know, going to the store and like making sure you're all stocked up and ready to go. And then getting to your mission, you're like, God, I've been playing this an hour.
I remember there's a mission where you go meet an old flame. And so I was like, oh, so I went and took a bath.
In the game?
Pomaded my
or
hair.
in real life?
I didn't take a bath all weekend.
Because you've been playing Red Dead Redemption?
Yeah, because but in the game I played...
you took multiple baths.
Yeah, I took multiple baths, and then I went and saw the old flame, and it didn't pan out, so...
Yeah.
Bummer.
Yeah. You basically have more of a social life and better hygiene in the game than you do in real life.
It's really, really great. And it's the cool thing, I think, is like if you and I were to talk about details of our experience playing the game, other than the story, because I think the story is going to be pretty the same for everybody, right? But like just running around in the world where you run into other things or the side quests, we're going to have very different experiences in this game. Our characters might be very different. It's I actually liken it to it's the closest thing we'll ever get to Westworld in our lifetimes, you know, because it's a lot of fun. It feels like you're in the West. You have to do mundane activities like you're in the West, and it just feels like the closest thing we'll ever get to Westworld.
Yeah. Well, it has all that, but I think the element that really sells it is the story. And like I said, the first one, I think, had a story worth telling. And I think my big fear for this one was that it would just not capture that magic. Or it would be, like I said, more like Grand Theft Auto, where it's just kind of nothing. But the story is where it's at. And it really is a story about redemption, right? So it being a prequel to the first one, it has a lot of the same characters from the first one that you know, and people who've met their conclusions, you know, in Red Dead 1 are now, you get to see a different side of them now and see them as different people, and it complicates your feelings about, you know, the events that took place in the first one. So ultimately, it sticks by the theme that made the first one so good, and it's just very strong storytelling, in my opinion, and a lot classier than I think a lot of video games are. I mean, there's some cheesy tacky rock star humor in it for sure. But I don't know, man. It's really good. If this were adapted into like a movie or a TV series, it could be done. Not that I condone that, but the story is good enough, you know?
Yeah, I actually, playing it so much as I did this over the last weekend, I kind of liken it also to binging a TV show. As you do the missions, like you're watching all these different episodes as they happen and participating in them too. So it's very much like a binge, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And they take characters that we've known for almost 8 years now, since the first one came out. And, they show us more complicated versions of them and kind of deepen our emotional attachments to it. So I'm actually excited to play the first one again right after I finish the story to this one. I think that'll be really fun. So anyways, if you like Westerns, play it. If you like video games, play it. If you like good stories, play it. It's just the amount of detail in this world is just crazy. We haven't even talked about all the crazy things that are better about this than most open world games, but this isn't really a video game podcast. So, ultimately, I just think it's a great story, great Western.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, what?
How is the voice acting in it? Because that's kind of one of those things with heavy story games that usually rubs me the wrong way. But, it's 2018, so I imagine they're a lot more careful about it than they were when I was playing more video games,
Yeah, well,
8 years ago.
I think a lot of it now, they have motion capture in faces and in body animations. So in a lot of really key scenes, they don't have to like over the top act like they used to. Like, like old video games, they had really clunky movements. So you had to do the same thing that like voice actors who do cartoons have to do. Like they have to act at like 110% with their voices instead of 100%. And so it sounds a little like hokey. Mm-hmm. That might be there in like some of the side missions and some of the people walking around town, Right. But in all the key elements for the story and all the cinematics and stuff, it looks very good. Your guy can look any way you want, but he's always voice acted by the same guy, and the motion capture is really good. But you can change your hair however you want, and you can change his outfit and his clothes. But ultimately, I think like Chris said earlier, I think you can be like negative and positive, and so like the negative version of him may be completely ridiculous, but I've been mostly like honorable. Yeah, and I think the voice acting is all really good. There's some definitely over the top accents, but
sure.
The voice acting I think is really great. It reminds me a lot of Deadwood. I don't know if they actually got any actors for it from Deadwood, but a lot of the voices sound
there's a girl character
familiar
in there that reminds me a lot of a girl character from Deadwood, and how completely over the top her accent is.
Yeah. It actually reminds me a lot of Deadwood, just as a game.
The aesthetic looks a lot like Deadwood.
Yeah.
That cold, like rainy, wet west that's like grassy.
As the cities and towns are being built.
Yeah, it's like as the West is dying and like there's just no more room for gunfighters anymore.
Yeah.
What is the spaghetti western that's really muddy and gross? Is it The Great Silence, or is it
the
the
Great
one that's
Silence
really snowy?
is one that takes place in the snow. There's also Kioma, which is very muddy.
Yeah, I think also just like the original Django.
Yeah, the original Django is pretty muddy. Yeah, pretty gross. And also, there's a really crazy spaghetti western called 4 of the Apocalypse that it's just really bonkers and weird, but has a lot of similar themes as the Red Dead games.
Sweet.
Yeah.
They're pulling from the classics.
Cool. That's all I've got for now. I could go on probably for like 2 more hours about this, but we need to talk about The Old Man and the Gun. So whenever you guys are ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. This is our review of The Old Man and the Gun.
Hey, excuse me. Need some help?
No, I'm good.
Let me take a look.
You know anything about cars?
No, not really.
So, what did you say you do?
Well, that's a secret.
And why is that?
Well, because if I told you, you probably wouldn't want to see me again.
Who said I was going to see you again?
Would you? Well, let's take this place. Say it was a bank, and instead of that counter up there, that was really a teller's window, and you just walk in, real calm. So you walk right up, look her in the eye, and you say, "Ma'am, this is a robbery." and you show her the gun like this, and you say, I wouldn't want you to get hurt, because I like you. I like you a lot. So don't go breaking my heart now, okay?
You're not serious.
All right, so before we get into our review of Old Man and the Gun, just want to let you guys know that we're going to be talking spoiler-free for the first little while, so there will be no spoilers, and then we will give you a nice big spoiler alert so that you can pause the episode and not have the film spoiled for you. You can go see it if you want, and then come back and finish the episode, or if you decide you don't want to see it, just go ahead and finish the episode, I guess.
Yeah, whatever. Don't let us tell you what to do.
Yeah.
But don't say we didn't warn you.
If you want to watch the world burn, go ahead and finish.
Who are we to stop you?
Yeah.
All right. The Old Man and the Gun, directed by David Lowery, starring Robert Redford, Sissy Spacek, and Casey Affleck. The IMDb synopsis says, based on the true story of Forrest Tucker and his audacious escape from San Quentin at the age of 70 to an unprecedented string of heists that confounded authorities and enchanted the public.
Got some issues with it, but things we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah. The synopsis or the movie?
The synopsis.
Okay. But not the movie?
All
in due time. Don't spoil it.
I might have tiny issues. We'll see.
Okay.
I might have big ones. I don't know. I don't want to spoil.
All right. So, guys, I will go first.
All right.
So, I thought that this movie looked pretty good based on the trailer. It has all the right elements to be a good movie. Robert Redford was getting a lot of praise, and Sissy Spacek is always good. I like the director, David Lowery, based on his recent work. He seems like a pretty diverse guy. Plus, it's a fun premise to a story, right? So it looked like it might be a good watch. Ultimately, I feel like that's what it was. Like, I had fun with this movie. And in a few scenes, I was genuinely moved by it. I think the scenes with Robert Redford and Sissy Spacek's characters were the standout scenes for me. I really, really liked those. But I also enjoy the supporting cast. We got Danny Glover and Tom Waits also being charming here. And I also like the look of the film. It feels like a 70s old school kind of movie in the way it's shot. So I really enjoy that. I think the movie, though, even though it's short, could have maybe been a few minutes shorter, in my opinion. I think maybe we spend a little too much time with some side characters we can get into later. But by the end of the film, I looked back and I feel like, maybe we spent a little bit too much time away from what I feel like makes the movie best, and that is Robert Redford. So it has some nice bittersweet reflections on getting older and trying to stay young at heart. And I think it's a good sit, but it's not great, in my opinion. Yeah, so that kind of sums it up for now. Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
What you got?
So I think sometimes a movie might not be great, and a movie might, potentially have some issues that you can get hung up on. But then there are movies that, despite those things, are just pleasant. And I think that is like the most accurate word I can think of to describe this film, is that it's just pleasant. And for that, I really like it, because I wasn't struggling at any point to sit through it. I was enjoying it like at a very, very base level. I was always enjoying myself and enjoying seeing what was going on. To kind of echo you, Mike, I think the performances are all really great. Particularly for me, the standout more than Robert Redford is Sissy Spacek. She's like really, really good in this for me. She's awesome. And
yeah, she's always great.
Yeah, she always is. I guess that might go without saying. You're right. But also the look of the movie, I think, is really great. There's a lot of zooms and a grain to the film. I'm not sure if they shot it on film, but it certainly seems like they did.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it. That's what I was saying earlier. It feels like an old movie.
It does. It looks like it's set in the 80s, but it looks like a 70s movie, which I find very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I love the tone. I love the pacing. I've seen people talk about how there's not a lot happening in the film. And in a sense, that's true. Like, I find the film to have like very little conflict. I don't find the film to have much of an antagonist. Basically, every character in it is likable. And that adds to like the pleasantness for me. And but I don't agree that means that nothing's happening or that it's not like an interesting movie. I think there's a ton going on with like the characters and the things they're saying and things they talk about, in the first 25 minutes that are really important for the last part of the film, like the last 20 minutes or whatever. And kind of to the point where, like, by the end of the movie, I'd forgotten so many things that were said, and like specific things that were said, and I feel like it's the type of film where like the things the characters are saying matter, and the things that they're doing matter in a grander scheme than like just within the scene that those things are being said. So like, I already want to watch the film again, just to glean more from the characters, to glean more from the film and what the film's trying to say, just because I feel like there's so much in it that doesn't feel as important when it's happening, but looking back on it, I'm trying to remember, like, what is it that they said in this scene? I remember him saying something now that I'm thinking back that, like, I feel like that was important. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Like a theme that they could have been touching on throughout the movie that may have gone over your head the first time. Yeah,
and that's part of the pleasantness of the film, I think, is that it's like some things don't feel like you need to take them in or remember them. But by the end, I feel like there's a lot more that I needed to pay attention to, a lot more that should be remembered. And I think a second viewing will really make the movie shine. That's my guess.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, that's it for me right now.
Yeah, sounds like you were pretty high on it.
Yeah. I was really looking forward to the film. I've only seen one other David Lowery film, which was the Ghost Story, and I really, really liked that one. So this one had me excited. I've seen this now. I really liked it. I don't think it's a great movie, but the experience of watching it, like, I really, really liked it, and I have to go visit his other films now, I feel like, after having seen this and A Ghost Story.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on Pete's Dragon.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too, because I could not have had any less interest in seeing that film when it came out.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so Chris, what did you think?
Yeah, so I talked about this film a little bit a while back on the podcast, and my feelings haven't really changed a whole lot. Robert Redford and Sissy Spacek are outstanding, I think, in this film. And I think this is a good movie, not great, but it just gives you the warm fuzzies throughout the whole movie. Like, it's just a really warm movie, except for like maybe there's one thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way or doesn't rub me the wrong way, but isn't so warm and fuzzy. But unfortunately, though, I think ultimately it doesn't stick the landing. The very end is kind of where it kind of loses me a little bit. Like, maybe it's got the Lord of the Rings syndrome where it has like 2 or 3 endings. But yeah, it's hard I don't want to be too negative about it, because it's like, this movie's like a little puppy that's just like you want to pet, and it's just cute and fun and fuzzy. So I don't want to be too negative on it. And I think both of you guys are right. It's just this great, warm, fuzzy movie that you feel really pleasant watching, like Justin said. It's just a really pleasant movie to watch. It's fun and very enjoyable. I don't think you necessarily need to see it in the theater, but yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah. It sounds like it's mostly all positive, even though maybe not like glowing one of our favorite movies of the year, but we're all pretty positive on it, which is good.
Yeah, I agree. So this guy that Robert Redford is playing, Forrest Tucker, I feel like we are seeing, of all his adventures that this guy went through throughout his lifetime, right? He escaped a lot of prisons, and he was always running from the cops. I feel like the part of his life we are seeing in this film makes the least interesting movie that could have been made about this guy's life. Which, to say, it's still good, and it's still a delightful little movie, right? But it's interesting, this guy, you could have made any number of crazy adventures from this guy. You could have made a TV show based on all this guy's like escape attempts, and you would have had like plenty of story to tell,
Yeah. Well, that goes to my issue that I brought up earlier with the IMDb synopsis, because it makes it sound as if you see his audacious escape from San Quentin.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They're kind of like banking on the more exciting story.
And it seems like the craziest thing that's happened to him, like in terms of all the, all the stories that he's told and everything that he's doing. It seems like the most like, holy crap, how did he do that thing? Right?
Yeah, because heads up, anyone who hasn't seen it, this movie is about the old man and the gun. As an old man robbing banks, we do not have any escapes from any prisons or anything like that.
And he's pleasantly robbing banks at that, so it's not even very exciting there.
yeah, it's not a thrilling adventure at all.
No, and I mean, in some ways, ask you guys like how you feel about that too, but like in some ways, that is part of what I really enjoy about the movie. Like, I kind of like that it's a movie about a bank robber, but like the bank robberies themselves aren't much of a focus.
Yeah.
Like it's not, this could easily be like how do they pull off these bank robberies and this guy trying to hide out after his bank robberies and not get caught, and the authorities and law enforcement could be like coming in on him, and that could be like the focus, and it could be really suspenseful.
Yeah, like what's that movie with like Morgan Freeman where the old people are gonna rob something?
Is it Las Vegas?
No.
Or is that something different?
No.
That's something different. That's a different movie. Never mind.
It came out, there's 3 of them, had Alan Alda in it. Anyway.
And Christopher Walken, right?
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, like they're all like sitting around and they're like, we're going to rob it because we lost our pensions or something. It could have been that.
Yeah.
Which didn't
There's
look
a very
good.
different movie in here somewhere. And I'm actually kind of glad that it...
No, but
it
yeah,
is
but what
it
I'm
is.
saying is I agree with Justin. I think this is ultimately the best way to tell this story, right? This isn't an adventure. This is very much a tale about getting older, trying to change your ways, you know, if you can at that age. Mm-hmm. It's very much a character movie. And Robert Redford is delightful in it. He reminds me a lot of like Jimmy Stewart and Harvey in that kind of just like unrealistically nice kind of way that almost inspires you to be like, maybe I can be a better person for a little bit after you get done seeing it.
Yeah, definitely. I think Harvey is a great movie to compare it to, just because like I can't watch Harvey and not be smiling 95% of the time.
Yeah.
And just be happy.
Yeah. And there were a few scenes in this movie where I realized that I had a big smile on my face when watching it. And then I was like, well, that feels good. Like, you know, but like I caught myself being like, whoa, I'm smiling pretty goofy right now.
Right. I had that too. And then I realized that I was in the theater by myself and it didn't matter how big I was smiling because no one could turn around and look at me.
Yeah, so then you took your shoes off.
Maybe. I took at least one off. That's all I'll say.
Scandalous.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I think something that really shined for me in the film was the score and the music in it. I feel like this is a soundtrack that I will want to listen to, you know, maybe a week from now when it's a little less fresh in my mind. And I'm like, oh, man, I remember this music being so good. And I'll look up the soundtrack, both like some of the like full on songs during the movie, but also just like the score in general. And I'm not a person that really listens to movie scores on their own. Like I don't look up soundtracks and listen to them unless like the score really hits me in some sort of way. So to have that feeling, it's a lot for me. Yeah,
David Lowery is really good with mood, and I agree that the score was really good, but the soundtrack, to jump off that, which is the music selection of like songs from the 60s and 70s, were also really good. It had The Blues Run the Game. That was playing during like a very key scene in the movie. It's also in the trailer. But yeah, I love that song. I actually have that on Spotify playlists often. So nice. I was happy when that song showed up in the movie. It made me happy. So I agree with you. Great use of music. Sets the mood. Puts you in this headspace of, I don't know, this old-timey feeling, you know? Yeah. And there were moments that reminded me, I mean, throughout the movie, but just in specific regards to the music, there are moments that reminded me of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And what is the song that plays in that movie where they're like riding bikes and having a good time? Oh, raindrops keep falling on that's my right, head. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. Yeah. A little less like on the nose, upbeat and happy than that, but there were songs that like just gave me that feeling of like this movie is just having fun, you know, content with just being happy and like making me feel happy right now. You know what I mean? It's not trying to make me feel suspense or make me worried about what's going to happen to Robert Redford or Forrest Tucker. Like you care on a character level, like you care about him wanting to do the right thing, or you want him to make good decisions, but you're never scared for like his safety, right? Or you're never scared anyone is going to hurt one another in a really bad way in this movie. Like you're never scared the drama is going to turn dark. Right. Ultimately, I feel like this is a good movie to watch with your family on cable, or like if you're ever like at home and you have like everyone in the house. This is something you can watch with your dad or your grandma, right? Because who doesn't like Robert Redford? Yeah, if you're not feeling good, maybe like you're feeling a little under the weather, this will kind of pick up your spirits. Yeah, no, you're not. So you're not feeling good. You put on a movie, and this movie makes you feel good. Oh, you know, like
Yes, if that makes sense.
Maybe.
Oh, I see. I thought
don't
you
know.
meant like, this is one of your sick day movies. Save it for when you're feeling sick. Because it's not worth being healthy for.
No. That is
Yeah,
not
well,
what I meant.
I got what you meant. I'm not totally sure that I agree, but I kind of do actually now that I think about it, because I started thinking about films that I watched when I was sick, and some of them were Indiana Jones. One of them that I watched a lot was The Breakfast Club. And I do have this vibe of the movie. It goes back to what I was talking about earlier, of saying that like everyone in the film is likable. There's not really like an antagonist in the film, and not much of one anyways. Like even the slight antagonist there might be is pretty likable. And in that sense, I feel like revisiting this film will be kind of like the way that I revisit Breakfast Club, where it's a bit like seeing old friends or seeing like characters that you love again and like hanging out with them for a while. And Breakfast Club certainly has that vibe. And I know this to me kind of seems like that, just because so many of the characters are just like cool people, you know what I mean? Or like just fun to be around.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So maybe you're right about, hanging with old friends when you're sick. Maybe.
Yeah.
I agree. That makes sense. I'll concede it.
Woo! Sure.
I'll allow it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right. Does anybody have anything else? Are we ready to move into spoilers?
I say spoilers.
Let's do it.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
I'll tell you what, you know them cigarettes you got up there, I'll tell you all about it. And here we go.
So, the one thing other than the pleasantness of this film that stuck with me is the parallels between Robert Redford's character and Casey Affleck's, and how Casey Affleck is so obsessed with catching, his passion is to catch Robert Redford and the gang and all that, and it's pulling him away from his family, right? And Robert Redford's passion is, robbing banks or doing what he does, right? And that's pulled him away from his family. Like, there is a point at the movie where he says he doesn't have any kids, and that's a lie, I believe, because when Casey Affleck goes and visits Robert Redford's daughter, there's a picture with Robert Redford in it and with the kid, and so Robert Redford knows he has a kid, and he has kind of neglected his parenting responsibilities, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this parallel, Casey Affleck makes a decision opposite of Robert Redford, and I really enjoy that part. That's the thing that stuck with me over the last 3 weeks after I've seen it, that I really like about this movie is, even though Robert Redford's a really pleasant guy that you really like, he's not that great of a dad for sure. But you see Casey Affleck and how he makes different decisions to be with his family as opposed to his obsession or his passion. And I really enjoyed that part, and I was wondering how you guys feel about it.
Well, I also liked it a lot. I didn't think about it too hard in those terms whenever I was watching it, but I really agree with you. I didn't notice the pictures with Robert Redford with his kids, where like he clearly knows them. So I was actually wondering the whole time if he actually did have a relationship with them. But I agree with you, though. I think it's completely clear in the movie that he's not a good dude. Like, he's a gentleman and he treats people nicely, but he's very selfish, and like almost every decision he makes is for like his own thrills and his own jollies, right? And like he doesn't seem to care about like, oh, she doesn't want me to have a whole bunch of cops run up to her farm
right
while I'm riding her horse around. Like, that's not a cool thing to do to somebody.
It was very pretty, though.
Yeah, made for a cool scene.
Yeah, but that is agreed. And that was the thing that kind of bothered me at first about the movie, was that, like, oh man, we spent all this time with him, and the movie wants you to like him so much, but he's not that great of a guy. But ultimately, he's a flawed guy that I really like. He's like your best friend that makes the wrong decisions, and you're like, why are you doing that? We all know how this is going to end, type of thing. And I still think that the warm fuzzies are there. Justin, how about you? What do you think?
Well, first I think the line where they talk about the kids, Sissy Spacek asks him, do you have any children, when they're first getting to know each other? And he says, I hope not. Right. And like Mike, I don't recall specific pictures of him with her where we know that he knew.
Yeah, I even thought Elizabeth, what's her name? Elizabeth Moss's character, I thought she said he may not even know I'm out here, or may not even know I exist.
Well,
I thought she had a line like that.
been a while since I've seen it. You guys have both seen it since I have. I thought that Elizabeth Moss showed a picture of her as a baby with a man and a woman in it. So I could be wrong.
Yeah, I remember that picture. Now that I'm thinking back on it.
She didn't ever know him, and it may be that he never, doesn't know that she's out there in that way, like out in California, or no, I don't know. I'm not exactly clear on that part, to be honest, but that was my takeaway from it, but I don't necessarily have evidence for it.
Right, and I think with most of like the themes and the things that the movie's trying to do, it doesn't really harp on them too on the nose or like too specifically. I think there's a lot of like sort of like subtle things to find in it or to latch onto and explore. And one of those, kind of going off of this, is there is a sense from time to time of the victims of his crimes, or the people who suffer from what he's doing and the way that he's living his life, despite him being so pleasant about it, and the people who he's literally robbing, the banks and the tellers and the bank people, usually end up pretty happy about the whole experience because he's so nice. Like, I think we get that, but there are examples exactly like that of the daughter, and then even towards the end of the film, Sissy Spacek, who in some ways are suffering because of what he's doing. So despite the fact that on the surface these feel like victimless crimes,
well, it's more the way he chooses to live his life, right? It's not the crime so much as the people that get close to him, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, and so I just found that interesting that the typical victims don't really seem bothered by what he's doing, and or ultimately they don't have any like traumatic experience with it, but these people that he's connected with,
his loved ones are the victims,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Which I found very, very interesting.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It also, Chris, what you were saying, that theme, that idea, helps me with my main problem with the movie, which is whenever it was going on, I remember distinctly thinking multiple times, man, we are spending way too much time with Casey Affleck's kids.
Right, but they're so cute.
Yeah, but like, it's just boring. Like, I just wanted to get back to Robert Redford and Sissy Spacek. And, like, I'm not saying cut the kids out of the movie, right? But, like, we don't need that many scenes with them. And we could still get that theme across. I don't know. That's just literally my only complaint. Other than that, I think the movie's delightful. I really enjoyed Casey Affleck's performance and that character. But every time we hang out with his wife and his children, I wanted to move on.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember any scenes that I felt that way. Nothing comes to mind immediately, so I don't know that I had that issue with it. But I certainly remember Casey Affleck and all of those things more than his kids. Like, I remember enjoying the scene through focusing on Casey Affleck's character and what he's thinking and feeling during all of them. Yeah. So I think I understand in the sense that the kids aren't doing anything.
They're not adding
interesting. Yeah, I know what you mean, I think.
Yeah, I could have just dealt with more Casey Affleck brooding. I don't know. I'm always overly paying attention to children dialogue in movies, I think. Because a lot of it always feels overwritten when I start thinking about it. Like, a child wouldn't ask this question. Like,
well, yeah, that may be true.
Like, he wouldn't care what his dad was doing. You know what I mean? Like, this looks like boring adult stuff. So a lot of scenes like that feel like contrivances for script reasons. But like I said, that's very minor. These kids are good actors. The scenes aren't bad. And it's about Casey Affleck. And it ties into the theme Chris was mentioning earlier, which is how he starts to drift from his family and then makes a conscious decision to be a different man.
Yeah, and I also think the film is also about getting older, like we've talked about before. And I think there is, Robert Redford doesn't have any kids, or he has a kid, but he hasn't attached himself to him. And Robert Redford's basically Peter Pan. He's never going to grow up. But in this way, I think Casey Affleck gets to stay young through his kids. So he also finds an outlet, or he gets to be like Robert Redford in a certain way by staying young, but it's through his kids. It's through a family, and I think that's how that fits in here as well. And it may be that there are too many scenes with the kids and they overdid that point, but I think that's why you have the kids in there, because it's talking about aging and how to stay young.
Oh yeah, that's definitely why you have them in there for sure.
Yeah. And that's why the film opens with Casey Affleck's 40th birthday, and he
exactly.
is not thrilled with people bringing up the fact that he's turned 40.
Exactly.
He looks good for 40, though.
Yeah, he does.
Casey Affleck always looks young, though.
Yeah, he looks the same here as he did in Ocean's 11, but not the same as he did in Chasing Amy, because he looks super young in Chasing Amy.
I don't even remember him in Chasing Amy.
He's in like the opening scene. He's like a guy with a couple of lines when they're making fun of Jason Lee for tracing the comics and not being the one who draws them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one of them is Casey Affleck who's doing that.
Nice.
Yeah. So speaking of Casey Affleck, what did you guys think of the scene when Casey Affleck and Robert Redford meet for the first time in the bathroom of the diner? Because I really dug the vibe of it.
Yeah. Me too. That's my favorite scene of the movie, and the final gotcha that Casey Affleck gives him there in that scene is so good. Mm-hmm. And you just see Robert Redford's face go from that smug face he's had the whole movie to just be like, oh, maybe I'm being reckless.
Yeah, isn't that when he says his name? Isn't he just like, hey, Forrest?
Yeah, he's like, I'm smart, or I can figure it out, or something like that. Or I'm not out of my league. I don't remember what he says exactly, but
I think he said, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, he's like, I do know what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just, that moment's really satisfying.
Yeah, because you're
agreed.
Good. He needs that smug wiped off his old face.
Yeah, and I just like the whole scene is played with them smiling, pretty much.
And I also liked the scene whenever Sissy Spacek makes him turn around to return the bracelet and then makes him buy it.
Right, yeah.
That was good. And I like the way they both played it, too. You know, she's like, she smiles because it's dangerous and she knows what he's trying to do, but ultimately, tigers don't change their stripes, either of them.
Yeah, that was a good scene, too. And yeah, Sissy Spacek is just really great in this. I'm really sad that the buzz was all around, well, I'm not sad, but it's disappointing that the buzz was all around Robert Redford when Sissy Spacek turns in such a great performance in here, too.
Robert Redford, I'm retiring, I'm not retiring. It's just like the character in the movie.
Right. You're only damaging the people around you, Redford.
Yeah.
Right, and as satisfying as it is to see Redford kind of get it from other people like Casey Affleck, or when Sissy Spacek makes him return the bracelet, there is a part of me that likes him so much that I can see whenever he's in that sort of end montage after he stayed in prison and gets out and he's kind of living a straight life with Sissy Spacek. There's that part of me that it's like watching like an animal with a ton of energy, or like a puppy that just wants to run around being stuck on a leash and sad and tied to a tree where he can't do anything. And there's that part of me that wants him to just go do something.
Yeah.
You look unhappy.
Fly free, little bird.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of, him being in prison and waiting it out, there's the scene where Redford and Spacek Spacek is visiting Redford in prison, and he gives her the letter that details all of his different prison escapes, which I thought was actually a pretty cool scene, and kind of the one, in a way, it doesn't really fit with the movie, the editing and the vibe of that whole scene showing all of his escapes. It was more Wes Anderson-y than anything else in this film. Did you guys like that flashback, first of all? Did you enjoy that sequence?
Yeah, I certainly did.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. I liked it. I don't think it felt out of place, really.
Yeah.
I liked it.
I think it's just because it was so fast-paced and fast-edited compared to the rest.
Yeah, they don't have the money to make Robert Redford look that young.
Well, I like that they used an old film clip from when he was really young.
Was it a legit film clip?
I believe so.
I thought they were de-aging him for one shot or two shots every now and then.
They might have done that, but there is one where he's really young and running through the forest or the jungle or something that with his shirt off. And that's a clip from the film. The one thing that bothered me about the flashback, or at least it bothered me initially, was that after all the talk of his San Quentin escape and how great it was, when we see the San Quentin escape in the flashback sequence, we actually spend a lot of time on that one, a lot more than we do on the other ones. But then they just skip over explaining how he did it and showing you what he did after talking how crazy it was. And at first I was kind of disappointed by that. I was like, oh man, the crazy one, and you skipped over and you're not even going to show me. But there is a part of me that likes that more, because I think it leaves you with that legend, that folklore still in your brain, and doesn't really explain everything. So you can still think about that afterwards. And I I think I like that better than if they had shown me, now that I've had time to reflect on it.
Yeah. I mean, we're not watching that movie. We're watching The Old Man and the Gun, you know? So it just needs to build up his character and who he is and why he's so unique of a person.
I think it was delaying me like the instant gratification, but I think it was the right move for the film to do, to not show that.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. All right. So I don't have anything else, guys. I'm dry. Does anyone else have a point to bring up next?
I don't.
The only other thing that I haven't really mentioned yet is that in the theater, when they go to the theater, they're watching Two Lane Blacktop, which I thought was like a really appropriate film in terms of, this film kind of being the story of this bank robber who's, a senior citizen, but not really focusing on that. And they give us Two Lane Blacktop, which is a film about a cross-country race where the race doesn't really matter, and it's all about characters.
Yeah, that's true. The race doesn't matter at all in that movie.
No. And I guess it's just like, if you have any doubt that the film isn't doing what it wants to be doing, or if you think like this film isn't getting the plot right, or it's not giving me enough suspense, like I think this is a clear statement of like, I'm trying not to, at least for like cinephile people who have seen Two Lane Blacktop. Yeah.
And if you are a self-proclaimed cinephile and you haven't seen Two Lane Blacktop, do that.
It's great.
Yeah, especially if you like this movie or movies like it, that are slow-paced and very character-driven more than plot.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. But yeah, that is it for me on this film.
All right, so I guess that does it for our review of The Old Man and the Gun.
Yeah, and that does it for the episode, too.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. And then, of course, as always, thanks Jake Wagner-Russell for doing our intro and outro music. You can hear more of his music at soundcloud.com/bobscotch.
All right. Next week, we will be reviewing Beautiful Boy, starring Timothée Chalamet and Steve Carell.
Yeah. Better go stock up on the Kleenex.
Or I guess we could go see The Nutcracker with Keira Knightley.
Let's stick with Beautiful Boy.
No.
Nah. Okay, so if you want to send in your questions about Beautiful Boy and your thoughts on it, send those to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening, guys. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye.